Texas John Alden by Robert Howard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Texas John Alden by Robert Howard. I hear the citizens of Warhoop has organized theirselves into a committee of public safety, which they says is to protect the town agin me, Breckenridge Elkins. Sech doin's as that irritates me. You'd think I was a public menace or something. I'm pretty dern tired of their slanders. I didn't tear down their cussed jail. The buffalo hunters done it. How could I when I was in it at the time? As for the Silver Boots Saloon and Dance Hall, it wouldn't have got shot up if the owner'd showed any sense. It was Ace Middleton's own fault he got his hind leg busted in 3 places, and if the city marshal had been tending to his own business instead of persecuting a poor, helpless stranger, he wouldn't have got the seat of his britches full of buckshot. Folks which says I went to Warhoop a purpose to wreck the town is liars. I never had no idea at first of going there at all. It's off the railroad and infested with tin-horn gamblers and buffalo hunters and such like varmints, and no place for a trail driver. My visit to this lair of vice came about like this. I'd rode point on a herd of longhorns clean from the lower Pecos to Goshen, where the railroad was, and I stayed there after the trail boss and the other boys headed south to spark the belle of the town, Betty Wilkinson, which gal was as purty as a brand new bowie knife. She seemed to like me middlin' tolerable, but I had rivals, notably a snub-nosed Arizona waddy by the name of Biz Ridgway. This varmint's persistence was so plumb aggravatin' that I come in on him sudden like one morning in the back room of the Spanish Mustang in Goshen, and I says, "Listen here, you sand burr in the pants of progress. I'm a peaceable man, generous and retiring to a fault, but I'm reaching the limit of my endurance. Ain't they no gals in Arizona that you got to come pesterin' mine? Why don't you go on back home where you belong anyhow? I'm asking you like a gent to keep away from Betty Wilkinson before something unpleasant is forced to happen to you." He kind of rared up and says, "I ain't the only gent which is sparking Betty. Why don't you make war talk with Rudwell Shapley, Jr.?" "He ain't nothing but a puddin'-headed tenderfoot," I responded coldly. "I don't consider him in no serious light. A gal with as much sense as Betty wouldn't pay him no mind. But you got a slick tongue and might snake your way ahead of me. So I'm telling you." He started to get up in a hurry, and I reached for my bowie. But then he sunk back down in his chair, and to my amazement he busted into tears. "What in thunder's the matter with you?" I demanded, shocked. "Woe is me!" moaned he. "You're right, Breck. I got no business hanging around Betty, but I didn't know she was your gal. I ain't got no matrimonial intention onto her. I'm just kind of consoling myself with her company whilst being parted by cruel fate from my own true love." "Hey," I says, pricking up my ears and uncocking my pistol. "You ain't in love with Betty? You got another gal?" "A picture of divine beauty," vowed he, wiping his eyes on my bandanner. "Gloria Lavenner, which sings in the Silver Boot over to Warhoop. We was to wed." Here his emotions overcome him and he sobbed loudly. "But fate interfered," he moaned. "I was banished from Warhoop, never to return. In a thoughtless moment, I kind of pushed a bartender with a claw hammer, and he had a stroke of apoplexy or something and died, and they blamed me. I was forced to flee without telling my true love where I was going. I ain't dared to go back because them folks over there is so prejudiced agin me, they threatens to arrest me on sight. My true love is eating her heart out, waiting for me to come and claim her as my bride, whilst I lives here in exile." Biz then wept bitterly on my shoulder, till I throwed him off in some embarrassment. "Why don't you write her a letter, you dad blamed fool?" I asked. "I can't write nor read neither," he said, "and I don't trust nobody to send word to her by. She's so beautiful, the critter I'd send would probably fall in love with her hisself, the low-down polecat." Suddenly he grabbed my hand with both of his'n and said, "Breck, you got an honest face, and I never did believe all they say about you anyway. Why don't you go and tell her?" "I'll do better than that if it'll keep you away from Betty," I says. "I'll bring this gal over here to Goshen." "You're a gent," says he, wringing my hand. "I wouldn't entrust nobody else with such a sacred mission. Just go to the Silver Boot and tell Ace Middleton you want to see Gloria Lavender alone." "All right," I said. "I'll rent a buckboard to bring her back in." "I'll be counting the hours till you heaves over the horizon with my true love," declaimed he, reaching for the whiskey bottle. So I hustled out, and who should I run into but that poor sappified shrimp of a Rudwell Shapley Junior, in his monkey jacket and tight riding pants and varnished English boots. We like to had a collision as I barged through the swinging doors, and he squeaked and staggered back and hollered, "Don't shoot!" "Who said anything about shooting?" I asked irritably, and he kind of got his color back and looked me over like I was a sideshow or something, like he always done. "Your home," says he, "is a long way from here, is it not, Mr. Elkins?" "Yeah," I said. "I live on Wolf Mountain, way down near where the Pecos runs into the Rio Grande." "Indeed," he said kind of hopefully. "I suppose you'll be returning soon?" "Nah, I ain't," I says. "I'll probably stay here all fall." "Oh," says he dejectedly, and went off looking like someone had kicked him in the pants. I wondered why he should get so down in the mouth just because I weren't going home. But them tenderfoots ain't got no sense, and they ain't no use wasting time trying to figure out why they does things, 'cause they generally don't know theirselves. For instance, why should an object like Rudwell Shapley Junior come to Goshen, I wanted to know. I asked him once, point blank, and he says it was a primitive urge to see life in the raw, whatever that means. I thought maybe he was talking about grub, but the cook at the Laramie restaurant says he takes his beefsteaks well done like the rest of us. Well, anyway, I got onto my hoss, Captain Kidd, and pulled for Warhoop, which laid some miles west of Goshen. I weren't wasting no time, because the quicker I got Gloria Lavender to Goshen, the quicker I'd have a clear field with Betty. Of course, it would have been easier and quicker just to shoot Biz, but I didn't know how Betty'd take it. Women is funny that way. I figured to eat dinner at the Halfway House, a tavern which stood on the prairie about halfway between Goshen and Warhoop. But as I approached it, I met a most peculiar-looking object heading east. I presently recognized it as a cowboy named Tump Garrison, and he looked like he'd been through a sorghum mill. His hat brim was pulled loose from the crown and hung around his neck like a collar. His clothes hung in rags. His face was skint all over, and one ear showed signs of having been chawed on long and earnestly. "Where was the tornado?" I asked, pulling up. He gave me a suspicious look out of the eye he could still see with. "Oh, it's you, Breck," he says then.